Hey everybody, today we are going to finish our conversation about welding safety. This is so important because as we go out in the shop, we want to make sure that we are maintaining the safety of ourselves, the safety of our classmates, and just in general making sure that we don't harm each other or others. So just because we're getting towards the end of the school year and with testing and with limited time, I want to make sure that you guys have time in the shop to weld. So we are going to do this class virtually. If you are in class right now, Mr. Fissel is showing this to you. If you are first period, you are watching this from home, hopefully. But nonetheless, you do need to watch this. And what I would ask that you would do is go ahead and just, as we touch on an important, you just get a blank piece of paper, as we touch on an important safety measure in welding, jot those down. And I'd like to have you write down at least 10. And then Mr. Fissel will take that as a grade, and I will take that as a grade for first period on Monday. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. Maybe. Okay, so we talked really briefly, most of you, I think yesterday, on heat hazards and some of the hazards in general. So I just want to kind of review here. And I don't know if you can see me here, so I'm going to move me. But I think that should be working. Sorry if it's not. Basically, just touch through a few more of these things that we need to. So we talked about fumes yesterday, making sure that you're always in a well-ventilated area, whether that's having the garage door open or if that means having the vents turned on, obviously, if we're inside with the door closed. If you can't be in a ventilated area, making sure that you have some sort of facial covering on so that you don't breathe in all of those fumes, because and also they're combustible, so making sure that we're in a safe space for a combustible fume. Other with that too is heat penetration in a couple different ways. One, protecting your eyes, right? Two, protecting your skin so you don't get like a sunburn. So we talked about this yesterday, that obviously you weld without gloves, you could get a burn pretty easily. You're dealing with extreme heat when you're welding. And also making sure that we're wearing closed-toed shoes. So that's not flats, that's not anything where our foot is exposed. That's also not having boots with like the leg tucked into the boot, because sparks can travel down those bad boys pretty quick. Making sure that you never have a flammable thing near it. We had that straw stacked up out there for a minute, and obviously we weren't welding when that was there, but that's something that we wouldn't want around our welders when we're working, because obviously if the spark gets into that, that's going to light up pretty quick. Always having a fire extinguishers handy, and making sure that you're able to be around your area for about a half hour after you're done welding. So if there are any sparks that got in there, usually those are going to catch within that first half hour. And if they're festering anywhere, and just making sure that there's no hot surfaces or anything like that before you totally leave a building when you're done welding. Light penetration can be really crazy too. And when measuring in lumens, a weld is actually brighter than the sun. So you wear sunglasses when you look at that. You're taught as a kid not to look directly at the sun. You want to make sure that when you're welding, we're using our helmets. We actually used those helmets for the eclipse a couple years ago, if any of you went out with your middle school classes and looked at that. But using those welding helmets, using those shields, anything like that when you're welding, just to make sure that you're protecting your eyes, but also protecting your skin, because with that comes like UV light and UV rays that you can get what's called welder's flash, which would be in your eyes where you're seeing spots or even potentially going blind. And also you could get a pretty nasty sunburn if you don't have the right areas covered from long exposure to that light. So arc rays can injure your eyes and burn skin. And so you just want to make sure that you have the correct body protection and eye protection on when you're welding. Impact and penetration can also be a big deal in welding. So you're dealing with metal, you're dealing with wire, you're dealing with potentially sharp pieces. You don't want to have that obviously penetrate your body anywhere. You also don't want any type of flying molten, we call it slag, flying molten metal. You don't want any type of wire bits if you're using the MIG welder to get up into your eyes. So you will wear eyeglasses, making sure we don't get any bits in there. Also making sure you don't get a nasty little eye infection like this, where then they have to go in and surgically remove things, or it just gets really pussy and affects your vision. When you are welding, and we will follow this pretty strictly in class, there is specific clothes that you need to wear. That includes protecting you from the UV rays, protecting you from sparks, protecting you from splatter, protecting you from the heat, all those things. So you should always have closed-toed shoes. You should always have pants. You cannot have a cuff in your pants. You cannot have holes in your pants. You cannot have fringes on your pants. They need to be solid pants. Suggest jeans. Sweatpants could work, but you'll wear gloves, a long sleeve shirt with a high neckline, and safety glasses in your welding helmet. So we'll go through that a little bit more here in just a second. Also, other options when you, let's say this was just a grinder getting at with even through the glove, those grinders are meant to grind down metal. They can grind down your skin pretty easily too. Another reason to make sure that you have gloves on, or if you don't have gloves on, this could potentially be the case as well. Again, I want to reiterate this from yesterday. I'm not showing you this stuff to scare you. I'm showing you this stuff so that you respect what can happen, so we take the correct precautions not to let it happen. So when we respect the process and respect the things that we're doing and the level of extremity that it can go to, then we'll make sure that we're really safe out there. Harmful dust and smoke. Again, we talked about the fact that there's some really fine particles that are coming off of this metal. Also your gases, those can be pretty toxic when you take them in large quantities. So making sure that you have good ventilation is important. Making sure that you don't have your face in the gas the whole time. And we have ventilation hoods out there above the AC welders, so we'll make sure that those are flipped on. That switch is right there beside the sink. We'll make sure that those are flipped on at all times, and that we're also going to have that door open whenever we can. So when we're talking about the actual environment that we are going to weld in, you need to have fire extinguishers close to you at all times, and we're going to go through that here in just a second. And then again, be on fire watch for about 30 minutes after you weld, or stay in the area for 30 minutes after you weld to make sure that nothing develops. And then all combustibles should be moved away from the area where you're going to weld. So if we look at this bad boy, he's got a few things going on. And I'll give you just a second to either by yourself or with Mr. Fissel, just go ahead and brainstorm some bad things that are going on in this picture that shouldn't be going on. I feel like Dora the Explorer. So a few things if you were brainstorming this. One, he is standing on a crate that is not level, that is not sturdy, so there's a good chance that he could fall off of that. And also it looks to be wooden, which is not great to have around welding. Also, if you look at this picture, he's wrapped around his welding cord, which could also be very dangerous in the sense that he needs to get away, or in the sense that just he yanks and he trips himself and he hits his head, anything like that. Seems to have a bucket of something that is hazardous up here hanging. It could also be water, but that seems like a really inopportune location for that, whatever it is. His ventilation fan is all up down here in his business, which there is a low vac and high vac system that you can have. That's just probably not properly installed. Homie G over here does not have any type of protective equipment on. He is just using his hand to protect his eyes. He should have on a welding helmet or have a screen between him and the welding. There's a lot of clutter on this table. Looks to be a newspaper paint, which is very flammable, dripping down the side of the welding table. Not great. So he would really need to clear that off. It looks like he's welding on the edge of the table because of all that clutter, so he did not really give himself adequate room. There is a small fire happening down here. That's probably not a great thing to have around a welder. Last couple things as far as his PPE goes, I don't know what type of shoes he has on, but he does have his sleeves rolled up. Kind of defeats the purpose of having on a long sleeve shirt. And he really only has on sunglasses. He doesn't have anything protecting his face from the heat, and he also, those probably aren't welding grade glasses. So good job if you caught onto that stuff. The way that we can protect ourselves the best is by using what's called PPE, which is personal protective equipment. So the PPE that you need when you weld are safety glasses. We talked about this. They should be worn at all times in any shop, but especially when you're welding. You never know what other people will be doing. You never know what other equipment is going to be in use. And you want to make sure your glasses have those side shields on them as well, so things don't come up from you from the side. Sunglasses can impair your vision, shouldn't be worn. I know you're like, oh, I'm welding and they protect me from the sun. Welds are brighter than the sun, so that's not going to do it for you. Safety glasses, a number 10 minimum filter is used for welding. That's what's on that welding helmet, and that is again to protect your eyes from that light. And you're going to need those on top, that welding mask on top of your safety glasses. Not only does it protect your eyes from the light, but it also protects your face from the heat and from being hit by anything. One of my favorite quotes of all times is by Aristotle. It says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Success, therefore, is not an action, but a habit." If you make yourself and always put yourself in successful situations, then eventually it'll become a habit to you. It's not a single action. It is something that we repeatedly do. Let's apply this now to shop safety and make using PPE, using safety glasses a habit. So we're always setting ourselves up for that success. When it comes to clothing, and this is going to be clothing that you're going to be expected to wear while you're welding, this is going to be clothing that you're going to be expected to have in the shop. You will have a locker upstairs while we're welding, so you're welcome to bring in some of these items and keep them in here and change at the beginning of class, just like gym class. That way, if you don't want to wear these things to school every day, that's okay. You want to wear those flippy floppies when the temperatures get a little bit higher, that's fine. You'll just need to have closed-toed shoes here at the shop for welding. So, rules to this: do not wear any loose fit clothing. It can very easily be caught in materials. It could also very easily get caught in those sparks associated. If you've got some nice dangly strings on your hoodie, they can very easily fall down into that and catch on fire, or also get you tangled up and in a pretty bad situation there. Same thing goes with like a hanging jewelry. All right, if I have to lean over a weld, I don't want this getting all up in there. So that's going to be something, if you choose to wear it, it's going to get tucked in your shirt, or you're just going to take it off before you decide to weld. Ladies, you always need to make sure, or Zane, I guess, has your mullet. Anybody with long hair, you need to make sure that your hair is pulled back. It can also be caught in machinery. It can also catch on fire, especially if it's a big hairspray day. And so you want to make sure that it's tied back and out of your way. So one, you don't end up looking like Hades from Hercules with fire hair, and two, so that you keep yourself safe and don't get all tangled up, especially those of you with real long hair. As far as clothing goes, sandals, open-toed shoes, anything open-topped is not permitted when welding. Open-toed shoes aren't really permitted in the shop anytime. There's a good chance with welding that sparks are going to be flying at your feet, and you want to protect those from that burn. Also, you don't want to wear any type of shoes where the sparks can get down into your shoes and then they can fester. Flats not be worn, open top shoes. Any like the old Sperry's that were like open top, not going to be wearing those. And anything below your neck should not be exposed. So even like a deep V-neck shirt, you're going to wear something, want to wear something with a crew neck that comes clear up to your collarbone. We do have shop aprons and shop coats that you can put on over your clothes. They're flame resistant, so they'll help you in that regard. But if you can wear a long sleeve shirt, that helps too. You always want to make sure you have your 3Gs, your gloves, your glasses, and your goggles, or your, I guess your hood, glasses, and goggles are kind of the same thing. I would suggest wearing a wool or a cotton shirt, something that's a little bit thicker. You cannot and should not wear polyester when you're welding. So check that tag on your shirt and make sure that your shirts are not polyester. Polyester is basically a synthetic plastic that is turned into fabric for clothing. And so if that gets heat, it's actually going to melt, and it could melt to your skin and basically adhere to your skin in a really uncomfortable way. So no polyester. That's like no dry fit shirts, that style thing. Closed-toed leather shoes are a must. Long pants, long sleeves, high necklines, like we just talked about. Your gauntlet gloves, which are the welding gloves we have for everybody. A welding apron or coat and a welding helmet is all required when you are doing that. Bad ideas, anything made out of synthetic fibers, that goes back to that polyester note. Shorts, you will not weld in the school shop in shorts. You will not weld in the school shop in short sleeves. I only have so many coats. I don't have one for everybody, so you're gonna need to come prepared. Long sleeve t-shirt is great, that's thick enough, and the right material, that'll work out fine. And again, no V-necks. You also shouldn't wear deep clothing. So if you're a big sweater and you have gym right before ag, maybe take care of that somehow. You have a really high chance of electrical shock when you're welding in wet clothes. So if you're coming out of the rain or something. You want to make sure you keep the welding area clean of tools, scrap metal. We talked about that with that image. Free of anything flammable. Don't keep matches. Don't ever light a torch with matches. That's an awful idea. You're going to use a sparker, which is just like what you might use in chemistry, where it's like an immediate spark. You do not use a match to light a torch because it will in your hand and hurt you pretty well. You also never want to weld while standing in water because it is a great conductor of electricity. And like we talked about in the past, you will then become a part of that circuit, which is not great for you. You also want to make sure that you shield others from the light rays from the welding. So making sure those yellow curtains that are out in the shop, those are welding curtains. They just help protect eyes. You still don't want to stare at a weld through one of those, but they are going to protect you a little bit. You want to make sure the exhaust hood, you're deterring those fumes away. Cords stay out of the way. You don't accidentally cut them with the torch. And also you want to leave any hot metal out of a place where people can touch it or grab it. Don't even grab it with your gloves on because when you first weld, it's going to be really hot. You're going to want to pick it up with the finger tongs, which I'll show you next week. So just make sure that you're not picking up hot metal right away. Making sure that we're preparing our area before we plug anything on and or turn anything on. Let people know when you're welding. Weld and then turn your stuff off, unplug it, which we're not going to unplug the welders, but turn off anything that needs turned off. And then clean up your area. One thing that we will do when we're welding, you're going to yell cover really loud anytime that you're about to weld, and that's going to let other people in the shop know that you're about to weld. So that's important so they don't accidentally look over. Safety tips again, never use a match to light a torch. Never blow dust your clothes off using oxygen when you're welding. I know some people like to use an air compressor and blow off their clothes when they get really sawdusty or something. And you never want to do that when you're welding because that would produce oxygen, which is a huge intensifier, which will make you basically more flammable. When we start to talk about PSI and acetylene, we'll talk about that next week, but you never need the acetylene pressure higher than 15 PSI. And never cut galvanized metal inside because it actually has a protector on it, a protective film on it that makes it galvanized, but it also is not like, it puts off really bad fumes. Couple things about emergencies that you need to know. I'm actually going to take you on a little field trip. Fire extinguishers. There's one on every torch. There's also one right inside the shop. So, field trip. Right here is a fire extinguisher. There are different types of fire extinguishers. There's an A, B, C, and then an A, B, and a C. So you want to use an A, B, C can be used for any type of fire. A C can be used for an electric fire, which is basically means that instead of being a foam based that would have moisture in it, it is a powder based. It is going to smother the fire with powder as opposed to with like that foam that we know that kind of gets everywhere. So an ABC or a C style fire extinguisher is a powder based fire extinguisher, so it can be used on electrical fires like welding, so that you don't also electrocute yourself while you're trying to put a fire out. When you go to use a fire extinguisher, the first thing you want to do, if you've never looked at one before, is you want to take the hose off of the little holder there, and you're actually going to point the hose first. You want to make sure it's pointed away from you, pointed towards the fire, in case you accidentally take it off. You're not trying to chase or like put off the fire extinguisher. You're not trying to chase it around the shop. So always dislodge your hose and point your hose first. Then you're going to pull this pin, okay? This pin right here actually is a safety mechanism. It keeps, right there. It keeps the handle from being squeezed. Right now I could try to squeeze it, but it won't. I pull that pin out, it's now squeezable. But it's not gonna fire anything until I pull on this trigger. So I point the hose, I pull the pin, I point the trigger, and then you always wanna do a low sweeping motion with your hose as you're pulling it, because that's going to help put out the fire quicker, and you're going to be aiming towards the base of the fire, which is the hottest part. And when you extinguish that, the rest of the fire goes out as well. Now, in the shop, you do need to know about the emergency shutoff switch. The emergency shutoff switch is a quick kill switch, which actually cuts all of the power, basically cuts the breaker to the shop for any of the outlets. So in case of an emergency, if somebody is getting shocked or something like that, or somebody's gone down or whatever, you can come over here. Right here is the emergency shutoff switch. Red means stop. Okay, you'll hear a little breaker kick. Black means start. You'll hear it turn on again. And when you hit that stop button, none of the outlets are going to work, which all of the welders are run by electricity. They're run by outlets. So that's going to immediately cut any power. This is the safest place to cut that power, as opposed, making sure I put it back on, is immediately going to cut that power, as opposed to you having to enter that dangerous situation and become potentially also shocked or whatever the case may be. Also in the office, I do have a tourniquet kit and a first aid kit. That is all in this middle drawer. So when you pull this out, this is a tourniquet. You put it around the body part. If you have something that is bleeding really intensely, you put this around that injury. Let me show you here. Basically, it's Velcroed. So you would unvelcro it. Get rid of this instructions. This whole bad boy is Velcro. So you're going to, let's say I've got something penetrating my arm. I've got a major artery that runs through my arm to my heart. So I need to just put a tourniquet on that so I don't bleed out. So I'm going to put this tourniquet around, and obviously you're probably going to be doing this to somebody else, but if you're in a bad situation yourself, just like a belt, I'm going to put that around there. And I'm going to put this crank piece close to me if I'm putting this on myself. Ooh, wearing this sweater with Velcro is not a great idea. So I'm going to put this around here. This is not a toy. This is not something that you play with, but you do need to know where it is, especially in the case that Miss Wallet is also involved in the emergency. Somebody might have to do this. So you are going to put this around your body part like that, pull it really tight, and Velcro it, or around somebody else's body part. And then you actually unvelcro this white part right here. And this little twisty guy is actually, there's a kind of like a loop right here. When you twist that, that's actually going to tighten the tourniquet. So even though if you couldn't get it perfectly tight with the Velcro, twisting that and letting it set in this little C-clamp right there is going to hold it really tight. I put that piece of Velcro back around to hold that in place. And if you look, my hand's going to start turning blue. It says time on here. If you can and you're in a good situation, it's a good idea to write the time that you put the tourniquet on that limb on the tourniquet somewhere, or if you don't have a fancy tourniquet like this, let's say you're out in the field, you get caught off topic of welding in like a PTO shaft or something, and you have to tourniquet your leg, then just, and you're using like a belt to do that, somewhere, yeah, see my hands turning red. Somewhere you would want to write the time. That way when emergency responders or medical professionals get to that tourniquet, they know how long it's been on there, and if their limb, if it's been on too long, they might have to amputate, but just gives them an idea of how long that tourniquet has been on there. So I'm going to take it off. I'm going to undo the white Velcro. I should have made myself bigger for this. Sorry. I'm going to undo the white, or the white Velcro right here. I'm going to untwist that, undo that Velcro, and I can take that tourniquet off. So then to wrap it back up, I didn't realize how small that picture was, I'm sorry. I'm going to put, again, this twisty is how you tighten it, that in the C there, and I'm just going to wrap this bad boy up this way. So those are just some emergency procedures. Some other things you might need to know in an emergency: if there is a fire, you can use a fire blanket to smother clothing fires, as opposed to using like a foam extinguisher on somebody. You can also, again, use that chemical C style fire extinguisher, which is good for chemical and electric fires, because that's going to be the dry chemical as opposed to the foam for that electrical fire. First aid, we just talked about that. Treat all cuts and burns promptly. If you have a burn, treat it. Don't submerge it in ice right away. That's a really bad idea. You can put mustard on a burn though, and it keeps it from blistering and takes some of the sting away. Very temporary, not a medical procedure, but an option if it's just a small burn. And report accidents to either me, your backup. If there is an accident, let's talk about this. In the shop, you're going to come get me first. I'm going to be out there in the shop with you. You never weld without me out there. But regardless, notify me. If I am, otherwise, maybe it's a big accident, I'm helping somebody else, or if I am involved in the accident, okay? Like it's a multi-person thing and I've gone down, your next contact is Mr. Brem. Miss Bed-Eye's only here part of the day, so depending on what class you have, if she's here, that's great, but also just know that there's some days that she's not here. So Mr. Brem down the hall is certified in all of that, so go get him. Third contact is across the hall to guidance, and let Mrs. Levering or Mr. Jamal know. If none of them are there, run really fast and find somebody else. Main rule, absolutely no horseplay in the shop. This is a rule in woodworking, but it's a double rule in welding. If you are doing stupid things out in the shop, and yes, I'm going to use the word stupid because there's some things that just around welding you just don't want to do and they're plain outright stupid. So if you're messing around, if you're horseplaying, if you're doing those types of things that are putting yourself, somebody else in harm, you will not be out in the shop. You will not be welding. You will receive a 0 for participation every day, and you probably will not pass the 4th quarter. Okay. So it's super serious that you guys respect this process, respect the machines that we're using and all of that, and follow the rules, follow the guidelines, follow the safety procedures, and we'll all be in a really happy place. And you will be able to weld successfully and learn a really cool new skill. So thanks so much for watching. Mr. Fissel does have an image for you. You guys are going to play a little safety game. If you're in first period, I'm going to post that and or we'll review it on Monday. So watch this. If you're in first period, send me that list of 10 things, 10 safety procedures that you just wrote down. If you're in third period, please show those to Mr. Fissel, and he'll write you down. So thanks so much. Hope you enjoy. Tune into State Convention if you get a chance. There's a neat website you can check out for that. And I'll see you on Monday.